Welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swale. Today, I'm joined with Lee Bratcher. He's board member and president of the Texas Blockchain Council, an industry association that exists to advocate for blockchain-centric public policy initiatives, educate members of government about the benefits of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain technology. Lee, how are you?
I'm doing well, Brad. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. It seems like no matter what's happening, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and everything, there's always something happening there. And I don't know if it's about the price or is it going up? Is it going down? Is there something else going on? We're going to talk about the energy usage and all sorts of stuff. But it's always there. So I'm excited to talk to you about it. And I personally I don't have a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency sock puppet account on Twitter, but I'm a fan of it. I like it. I have some here and there. So it's really cool to talk to you. So why did y'all start? You started it, I think, the Blockchain Council. Why'd you do that?
Yeah, that's right. And you are correct. There's never a dull moment in this industry. I started it in 2019. I was a political science professor at a small university here in Texas. And I really saw a gap between the rough edges and the innovative free spirit of the digital asset industry and elected officials and regulators. They were talking past each other. There was just a level of abrasiveness from the industry that I thought needed to be smoothed out a little bit and needed to be communicated more effectively in terms that elected officials and regulators are used to hearing. And so background in policy and politics, my research area when I was a political science professor was blockchain and property rights. So I used those skill sets to fill a gap in the market and to start this nonprofit industry association that we've now grown into the largest state association in the country and passed a couple pieces of legislation and hopefully doing good things for the state of Texas.
I'm sure you're doing great things for the state of Texas. I have no doubt. So, I mean, I think it's interesting. A lot of people, so you guys focus on Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain. And, Bitcoin, I think, encompasses all of those things, right? It's crypto and it operates on the blockchain. Is there one, but you can't use, Bitcoin is not great for every, I'm sure, usage case for, I don't know, let's say government policy work, right? Maybe blockchain is more useful. How do y'all sort of separate those two? How do y'all focus on one or the other?
That's a good question. Yeah, we specialize in advocacy around Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin in general. But we also work with the broader crypto and digital assets industry or with exchanges. And we do a small amount of work with enterprise blockchain, which is, the way I would characterize it is Bitcoin is an order of magnitude level. It's a generational level technology that has huge transformational potential. And digital assets and crypto are similar, perhaps maybe not as transformational. Enterprise blockchain is what I would say is a step function. It's a moderate increase in efficiency for value transfer for enterprises and for data efficiency. It's not as transformational. It's not as efficient as, say, a normal SQL database. But there are use cases, and it provides we'll call it a marginal increase in efficiency when you're dealing with transactions across multiple parties that don't trust each other, where previously we were using like centralized ledgers and things of that nature. So we do all three, but we do specialize in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining.
Okay. So, educating members of government about the benefits of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or blockchain technology, I live in Austin, and certainly there's a lot of crypto and, blockchain stuff happening here. It's happening across, it seems like Texas is becoming really a hub for all this, which I want to talk about as well. But, I guess I'm kind of, because a lot of people they just know Bitcoin. Right, including members of the government, because that's the big news maker. The price is, it breaks a new record. It's $80,000. I don't know, whatever the number is, right? And that's a big news maker. But that blockchain technology can be used for a lot of different things. And I see stuff online, people suggesting it for, say, voting or something like that. Are there interesting? I don't know if Greg Abbott was listening, right? Are there interesting use cases for blockchain that could improve the, I don't know, the trustworthiness or the functions of government? Like, what would you suggest?
Yeah, blockchain is not a panacea. In fact, it is a slow and less functional form of a database, right?
Huh?
You really only see benefits with consortia of different parties that don't trust each other
Okay.
and are trying to operate off of a shared ledger system, right? So blockchain is like the next iteration of double entry accounting. So when you're talking about ownership data, property rights, transferring assets and transferring value on the internet, that's really where blockchain can come and provide that kind of transformational impact. So imagine, transferring the equity ownership in an apartment complex, right? Before you syndicated that out to a bunch of folks and they wait 5 years for a liquidity event. Well, perhaps if you tokenize the building, then you're trading these, equity tokens of ownership in that building. And you're trading those on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis. And so you have instant liquidity, you have greater democratization of the amount of people that can invest in that building. So that's just one use case out of many. Of course, voting, is a potential use case. They use blockchain for voting in some Baltic states in Eastern Europe, like Estonia, because they're very afraid of hacking, like the Russians hacking their voting systems.
Sure.
So, I don't know if voting, we're not really ready for that in the US. There's a lot of things that we do really well in the US, like land registries, like vehicle registries, that blockchain could certainly help with. But it's also very difficult to get public sector entities to change,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of political capital and a lot of sort of economic impetus to make that happen. And so, we're following that. We think there is value there, but it's not something that we see like right around the corner. There's going to have to be a lot of education that takes place first. Whereas like Bitcoin and crypto is here now, and it's
Yeah.
making a difference now. And so we're prioritizing our time on the things that are making a real impact, like in the here and now.
Yeah. So what are some of those things that I kind of want to talk to you about I don't know, your long-term view of all of these things, Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain, for Texas. What's the long-term goal, 5, 10 years, whatever. But if there's things right around the corner, right, that are more accessible, like I'd love to hear about those too. So what's the goal here? Are we El Salvador? Is that right? That has Bitcoin, right? Is that the goal?
They did adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. Well, I think the goal is, I'll illustrate it with this point. The microchip was invented and developed at TI in Texas,
Yeah.
but it was monetized and it was brought to the market by Silicon Valley in California. We do not want to allow the innovation that's going to take place with Bitcoin, with digital assets, and with blockchain technology to be monetized outside the United States because we have a poor regulatory climate. We want to make sure that happens here in Texas, that the venture capital, the entrepreneurs, all of these pieces of the ecosystem see Texas as the new Silicon Valley. And that's already happening to an extent. I mean, there's a stock exchange that's going to open up in Dallas in the coming months and years, the Texas Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
There's already big companies moving. I mean, Elon Musk just announced that SpaceX and X, or Twitter, they're moving their headquarters to Texas, and he already moved Tesla to here. So we want Texas to be seen as a leader in digital assets and tech more broadly.
Yeah.
So that's the overarching goal. That's what we're striving to achieve with all of our policy work and our advocacy and education work. And we do see some of that paying off already, but we think the dividends will be reaped in years ahead.
Okay. And some of those dividends, even you've mentioned property rights, you've mentioned, obviously if all of these, if all of the tech, if we become sort of the new Silicon Valley, I guess Texas, that would be a really big Silicon Valley, but hey, whatever. There'd be a lot of growth in the economy and stuff like that. Are there other benefits that say, I'm not an expert in crypto. I might know more than, my mom. Hopefully I do. But if there's, say just the layman, like, all right, beyond that, what are the advantages? What are some of the big advantages that a regular person might benefit from, but doesn't necessarily see?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, in the early 1990s, people thought the fax machine was a perfectly fine method for communicating business information from one business to another. And we really didn't have a scope or frame of reference for what was possible with the internet. And the internet's obviously been incredibly transformational. We are in the early 90s moment for the digital asset industry. And so much of what will be invented and what will happen is difficult for us to conceptualize, but it's very clear to most people that look at this and have studied this industry for any amount of time. You have some of the smartest people in the world, from some large Fortune 500s to VCs to entrepreneurs, pouring into this space because they see the future is digital.
Yep.
And if you're going to be transferring value on the internet, you better be doing it with this technology and not with analog technology like a fax machine. And so the way we transfer value is equivalent to a tax machine now. I mean, the way the SWIFT system works, the way that even property registries work for real estate transfer, the way that the ACH system works, the way that even stocks and equities are cleared in the back end. I mean, they seem to clear instantly in your Charles Schwab account, but is a very anachronistic way that we are transferring value in the age of the internet. And so the potential is certainly quite great. And it's already, part of it's already here. I mean, Bitcoin is already a commodity that's worth more than silver.
Yep.
And we expect in the next 5 years, probably be equal to the market cap of gold. And that's what I would describe Bitcoin as. It's digital, it's money, it's hard money, and it's digital gold. And it's a more efficient way to transfer value in the age of the internet. And then Ethereum and some of these other programmable blockchains, they are more for building Web3. They're building decentralized applications. Web2 was applications on your phone, applications on your browser. Web3 is decentralized applications. They call them dApps.
Yep.
And so those programmable blockchains incorporate smart contracts and Turing complete language where people can actually develop and create useful business tech on a decentralized, platform that nobody owns, that nobody controls.
Yeah.
And that's quite novel, and we've never had that potential before. And so there's different problems that those two. So even within crypto, you're solving two different problems. Bitcoin is money, hard money. It's supplementing the dollar as sort of a digital gold, just like at one point we had the gold standard and the dollar was backed by gold. Of course, we're not going back there anytime soon with the way we print money in this country. But that's one piece. And then the other piece is sort of the broader digital assets industry, where you have programmable blockchains, you have smart contracts, you have tokenization of real world assets. So the sky is the limit right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exciting times.
Wasn't it last session that Texas was floating? Were they floating a gold-backed currency, or were they floating a cryptocurrency? I can't remember, one of the two. But
Well, it was actually both. It was a gold-backed stablecoin. So it was using blockchain, but it was a gold-backed stablecoin. Yep.
is that going to happen next session, you think?
We were actually not the ones to draft that legislation. Most things to do with blockchain and crypto in Texas have our fingerprints on them. That would have been one of the only examples that I could think of that didn't. But we were certainly supportive, and
Yeah.
interesting to watch the progress of that bill. I don't know if there's much appetite for a gold-backed stablecoin. We already have the US dollar, and stablecoin, there's many hundreds of billions of dollars circulating in stablecoins already, and
Yeah.
99% of them are denominated in US dollars. The rest are gold and euros. So it's actually a very good thing for the US dollar to remain the world reserve currency. And stablecoins are a big buyer of treasuries.
Yeah.
Stablecoins buy more treasuries than the country of Saudi Arabia. So it's the 15th largest buyer of treasuries in the world. So former Speaker of the US Congress, Paul Ryan, actually wrote an op-ed recently about how stablecoins can prolong the dollar as the world reserve currency. So if people think that crypto and blockchain is not going to have an impact in the next 10 years on their financial life, they are mistaken. However, they may not need to necessarily understand how it works, just like I don't necessarily understand how TCP/IP protocols work when I'm sending packets of information over email, right? I know it works, but I don't know how it works.
The most important thing is maybe just figuring out which altcoin is going to the moon next, right?
We definitely don't speculate on that, and we encourage people to do their own research because it
No,
is
of course.
quite speculative. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's obviously going to be some growing pains, right? It's a new industry that people are, I don't know. I don't want to say Luddite, but there's some aspect of that. It's a new technology, and people are sort of, how does this work? I mean, I'm sure I fall victim to that as well to some extent. I don't know how this necessarily works. Is it a good idea? And so I'm glad to be able to talk to you to help sort of clear up some of that and learn more about it. But Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, he's not really going anywhere anytime soon. There, who knows what his plans are next? Is he going to run for governor? I don't know. But he came out recently, and I'll just read the quote. ERCOT CEO Pablo Vegas and others gave shocking testimony today in the Senate Committee on Business and Commerce that within only 6 years, our power grid needs will grow from 85,000 to 150,000 megawatts. And later in the testimony said the growth is due to the increases in population, normal business growth, and artificial intelligence. However, crypto miners and data centers will be responsible for over 50% of that added growth. And so he's talking about having to address that. Well, as we have Hurricane Beryl just went through, and I know that's not a grid issue necessarily. That's more power lines and everything like that. But as our grid gets taxed further and further because of population growth and stuff like that, well, it sounds like what he's saying is we're going to have to look at these industries and how they use energy. How do y'all respond to that? What's y'all's take on that?
Yeah, I testified at that same Business and Commerce Committee hearing as well. And part of the problem is so currently we have about 3,000 megawatts of Bitcoin mining in Texas. And depending on the day, that's anywhere from 2 to 4% of all power consumed within ERCOT. The nice thing about Bitcoin mining is it's a flexible load, meaning that it's very allergic to high prices. So if the price of power goes up, which is a proxy for grid stress, too much demand and not enough supply of power at any given moment, ERCOT prices these in 5-minute intervals. Bitcoin miners will shut down and they will curtail their energy consumption. So it is the only large-scale flexible load of the Texas grid that can act as sort of a capacitor to absorb excess power during times of too much generation and actually turn off and allow that power to be used by the rest of the grid in times when the grid is stressed. So it's a very unique energy consumer and one that actually benefits the Texas grid and benefits reliability. But Lieutenant Governor Patrick is not wrong in that we want a reliable grid and we want all Texans and all essential businesses to always have power. There's never going to be a Bitcoin miner on and consuming power when a Texan, an individual, a home, or a hospital cannot get power, right? Except for, like you said earlier, like an issue where a tree falls on a power line, we can't control that.
Sure.
Right? That's a localized issue. But if there's a situation where power demand continues to grow at the pace that it is, Bitcoin miners will be the first to curtail their consumption when prices rise. And the nice thing is we don't have to wait for a signal from ERCOT, or we don't have to wait for any emails to do that. We just watch the price on a second-by-second basis. And as the price goes up, we start to curtail after about $20 a megawatt hour, which is 20 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
So, it's a very flexible load in that way. And what I would also say to that is, the grid is a very unique thing. Bitcoin miners are seeking out stranded energy. They're not coming to like downtown Austin or Dallas and setting up a 50 megawatt Bitcoin mine, because that is scarce power. That is expensive power. So they absolutely do not want to be there. They want to be in like rural Central Texas or rural West Texas, or anywhere there's too much generation, too much wind, too much solar, too much natural gas, more power than the grid can handle, and more power than the local area can consume,
Yeah.
and more power than that the transmission lines can transmit. So we want to be soaking up wasted and underutilized power infrastructure, and that's actually good for the state, good for reliability. And so I think the lieutenant governor and the Bitcoin mining industry have similar goals, perhaps just a little bit different understanding about how we're going to reach those goals.
Sure. So I guess final two questions. You're talking about going to, I guess one, I want to ask if you're sort of friendly with, I guess the different energy, is what should we do about energy? Do we keep going nuclear or not nuclear? Do we keep going to wind and solar? Do we look at nuclear? Like, does Bitcoin and blockchain, do y'all have a horse in that race? But also when you're talking about going into, more rural areas, there's a story today about the noise pollution and sort of the community there. And so again, part of those growing pains, I'm wondering what y'all think about that. Do y'all have ideas about how to approach that?
Yeah. Yeah, Bitcoin mining facilities can be somewhat loud, the air-cooled facilities anyways. So what they're doing is these machines are pumping air through a circuit board that has chips on it, and the air is cooling the chips. So there's actually no pollution involved with Bitcoin mining. It's just air coming in, air coming out. The air is just passing over these chips to cool it, and it's perfectly safe to, obviously there's no
Sure.
actual carbon or anything being emitted, but it can be somewhat loud. And so the vast majority of these facilities are located in rural areas where that doesn't matter. There's not a home anywhere in sight. There are a few facilities that are located near homes, and there's been some articles about that recently. And I've been to those facilities personally, and I've spoken to those communities. And our members who own those facilities are very quickly trying to, they're actually employing mitigation techniques. They're changing from air cooled to immersion, so dunking them in dielectric fluid so they don't make very much noise, or they're putting up sound barriers and things of that nature. So a little bit of work to do there, certainly, and we're going to be very responsive and make sure that we're being good neighbors
Yeah.
to the communities. And
It sounds like easy fixes, to be honest.
well, they sound easy. They're very expensive. They cost tens of millions of dollars, but the industry is willing to pay for that because we want to be in Texas for a long time.
Yeah.
Be here for many years to come. We want to be paying taxes. We want to be hiring people. I mean, in 4 Texas counties, Bitcoin miners are the largest taxpayer.
Yeah.
In one county in West Texas, we double the taxable base of the county by bringing in Bitcoin mining facilities. And so, you can only imagine what that does for a rural community that doesn't have enough money to pave their roads or repair their baseball fields for the elementary, or the high school or something. So
For sure.
some work to do on the noise side, but I think that's a very isolated, very limited number of cases, and those companies are taking it very seriously and spending lots of money to make sure that they're being good neighbors.
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, and just real quick, because I asked, do you have like a 20-second answer to the energy question? Like, are y'all, do y'all promote a certain type of energy over another? Do you think that we should go nuclear? Like, what do y'all think?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a market function. The ERCOT marketplace is an energy-only market, which means that it's governed by the principles of supply and demand and the principles of economics. And so right now, because of the federal subsidy, it's distorting those economics and creating an incentive for more wind and solar. And wind and solar is great. We're very supportive of all energy generation types. But the problem with wind and solar is it is intermittent, and it's hard to manage a grid that has such high wind and solar penetration. We're, average about 1/3 of our grid at any given time is produced by wind and solar. And in sometimes, I think we hit 60% a few weeks ago, where there was one particular day where 60% of the generation resources that were on were wind and solar.
Yeah.
And so again, we don't have a dog in the fight or a horse in the race on which generation should be prioritized. Let's prioritize them all. Let's build wind, let's build solar, nuclear, natural gas. Of course, coal is out. Only about 8% of Texas's grid is on coal, and that number is constantly declining. But all the other generation sources are great. But the more wind and solar we have, the more flexible load you need, because if you have flexible generation, you have to have flexible load.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin miners are a great complement for wind and solar. We're also, co-locating with some natural gas generation facilities because we're able to soak up their extra power overnight and help them make a little bit of money overnight. Because the reason why we're not getting any natural gas generation built in this state is because they can't make any money.
Yeah.
They can't make any money because wind is blowing overnight, driving the power price negative. So they're having to turn off for 10 hours every night because they're just not making any money for that period. And we're able to help them be more economic and help those facilities pencil out in a better way. And so I would just encourage people to learn more about it. If you just read a headline that says Bitcoin uses a lot of energy, that might be concerning to you. If you really dive into the nuance of it, it's actually quite interesting, and there's a lot of potential here. We wouldn't want to stymie this growth before we, as a state and as a country, before we've actually learned a lot about it and how it actually works.
Yeah. Well, Lee Bratcher, president of the Texas Blockchain Council, I really appreciate you taking the time. Any final words?
Brad, we're appreciative of the opportunity to reach your audience. They can connect with us at texasblockchaincouncil.org. We're going to be holding events all throughout the state, primarily in the large cities of Texas, of Austin, Dallas, and Houston. But for your listeners, we want to connect with them, and they may want to learn more about what we do, and we're happy to make those connections.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too, Brad.